This is Miguel's workshop, and in this video we're going to do some hammering, some twisting, more hammering, whatever you call this, and one of these. So I'll start with a piece of 1084 that I've tack welded to a piece of rebar so they don't have to mess about with tongs. And then I'm going to mark a notch in here at 11 centimeters, which will draw it to about 22 centimeters, and I'll be able to find this on the anvil in just a minute. Now we'll find that notch that I chiselled in just a minute ago and just deepen it against the corner of the anvil with the hammer. And once I've got that set, it's just a case of more hammering. Now I'll flip it on its side every now and then, just to make sure that it's not mushrooming. I don't want to end up with a cold shot, and it's going to thicken as it draws out as well, so it's not going to draw out in just one direction. So you need to keep dressing it as you go. It's better to do that now than wait until it's too far gone. And then we'll start thinning out the tail of the bar. And you'll see that it doubles in thickness quite quickly. But you just have to dress it as you go. And now I'm just going to work on the transition there. And after about 20 minutes of hammering or so, it's going to be about 18 centimeters. A little bit to go, but there's still a very sharp taper to go in the tail, so I'm going to get to that first here before making it too long. See, there's not much to it. There's not much to it. Now I'm going to attempt to get most of this notch out of the bar. I don't want to grind this too much, but there's always a little bit of grinding, but I'd rather change the shape now with the hammer. Now I'm going to set the heel of where the bevel's going to start, and this is going to give me roughly the finished width of the blade, and that way when I curl the handle round I'll know where to put the little input. It'll make sense later. And now I'm going to mark the steel where I want to cut it with the cold chisel. And now, somewhat questionable technique, I use the hot chisel to cut it off. Always at about a 45-degree angle, because as you forge, the blade is going to want the tip up anyway, and so that downward facing point will want to move into the centre anyway. Holding the steel at an angle, hammering it at the same angle. Unfortunate the bevels didn't move the tip towards the middle as much as I thought it would, so I'm just going to refine it with the hammer. You can see it doesn't take much. And then we'll draw a bit of a distal taper on the horn of the anvil, and if you wonder why I keep tapping the anvil, this is why. Now it's not skiing down unless the spine is decorated, so about 1 centimetre apart I'm going to put little notches on each side of the spine, and then I'm going to use this little half round file to make little half rounds. And then I'll use this little triangle file to make little triangles. And then I'll heat the blade back up and stamp my maker's mark in it. It's always easier with someone to help. And then I'll heat the blade up to just beyond magnetic, or a dull cherry red. It's easier in this light to do it with a magnet. And then you'll know if your quench has been successful if you get this kind of, almost looks like a scale on top, and a normal file will just skate over the surface. But this is the first sign of a good quench. And then of course, more grinding. Even more grinding. Even more grinding. And then technically this isn't grinding because it's a cop wheel with buffing compound on it just to polish it out. But it's just as dull. And now to make its little sheath. Now the easiest way I've found to do this is to make a little, just fold over a piece of paper and make a little template. You'll probably go through 4 or 5 or 11 of these things before you find one that you like. Now it's much easier to cut leather from the grain side or the face side rather than the swed side. That's why swed boots became a thing. But you're so much at risk of getting the front side of the leather dirty or get glue on it or pencil marks or something. So it's worth it just to turn it around. Just take a little extra time. Now after giving myself some layout lines, I'm going to punch the stitching holes through one side of the sheath, because if you do both and you fold it over, they're not necessarily going to line up, and that's a painful lesson to learn. Now I'll give myself a starting point for the basket weave, just a straight line at an angle. Put my little stamp on the line, flip it around, join the tails. And that's all there is to it. And now where the leather's still wet, I'm going to dye the sheath. It seems to make a big difference for not having the dye just go a completely dark colour. and I'll do just the first inch of the inside of the sheath. Doesn't really make that much difference, it just looks much nicer when you look in the sheath from the top. And you can see how much dye is pulling on the top rather than just soaking in. So I'm going to get a really nice dark brown colour rather than almost black. And now I'll extend the punched holes for the stitching all the way through, which is a complete pain in the ass, but it seems to be the best way to do it. I don't like drilling them so much, because once you're finished, it just doesn't look as nice. And here's the finished knife. I'm quite happy with how it turned out.